Commissioner Duncan.
Here.
Commissioner Aguilar.
Here.
Commissioner Jensen.
Here.
Chair James.
Here.
And Commissioner Heck is absent.
Okay. This time I'll ask if there's anyone in the audience who has public comment on any of the items not related to the agenda today, but what may be related to planning issues in the county. Okay. Commission business, none. Consent items, none. First public hearing. This is the public hearing to consider the proposed rezone of two parcels from timber production zone 40 TPZ 40 to residential agricultural 10 RA 10 and general agriculture. And I think, is there a correction on these? Is this the item that has the correction?
Mr. Chair, the agenda item reflects the appropriate language, and staff will cover that correction.
Okay, thank you. General Agriculture 30 AG 30. If approved, the rezone will initiate the TP Zone 10-year rollout process in compliance with the California Government Code. The location of the parcels are situated south of Quaker Hill Crossroad, located approximately 4 miles southeast of downtown Nevada City. Staff?
Good afternoon, Chairman James and Commissioners. My name is Colleen Shade. I'm one of your planners in the Planning Department. Before you is the Pay Timber Production Zone rezone, and this project is file PLN 170051. The rezone is REZN 170002, and the initial study EIS 170030. The application is to that has been requested is to rezone TPZ 40 for parcels 1 and 2. 1 to be rezoned to residential agriculture RA10, and parcel 2 general agriculture 30. To give a little bit of background on TPZ, because it's not one of our typical zoning, it's more analogous to Williamson Act contract. And in this case, the applicant is asking for a 10-year rollout. The rollout is a term used for rezoning. The Forest and Taxation Reform Act of 1976 required county assessor offices to create two different lists, an A list and a B list. The A list, which the Nevada County Board of Supervisors approved in '76, was a list of parcels that were currently being assessed for their timber value. There was also a B list that the assessor was tasked to create, and that list was built based on the assessor's judgment on what were other parcels in the county that had timber value that made sense to be included on that B list. These two parcels were part of the B list and were approved by the Board of Supervisors in 1977 to become TPZ zoned parcels. To roll out or be rezoned out of the TPZ, there are two different processes. One is an immediate and the other is a 10-year rollout. The immediate is a much higher bar, and in the immediate there are three main things that need to happen. One is that a finding of public benefit is made for that immediate rollout. 2, there's a 4/5 vote of the Board of Supervisors. And 3, of course I'm going to forget what 3 is. And 3 is that's okay. It's not as important as the 4/5 and the finding.
And it's not applicable to this project. So.
It's interesting.
So this applicant has asked for the 10-year rollout, not the immediate. And in the 10-year process, it comes to the Planning Commission to recommend to the Board of Supervisors to approve the initial study, neg deck, to recommend the rezone. And then also, we've attached, just for your information, the resolution and the ordinance, draft ordinance, that will go to the board. Then, at a later date, the board hears this, and based on their hearing and your recommendation, they will choose to approve the initial study, neg deck, adopt or approve the zoning change, the resolution, and adopt the ordinance. Something I want to bring up about the ordinance. In the ordinance that is attached to your packet there, we have identified the findings to be made, the process that this is consistent with state requirements, and then also the timing. And the timing for the rollout is based on the approval date of the Board of Supervisors. So 10 years from the adoption of or approval by the board, this rezone then takes effect and is operative. It is not effective nor operative until that 10 years. And in the ordinance, it identifies how we make changes to our zoning map so that people will know that this is in the process. So a little context. Back to the project. The project, the two parcels sit approximately 4 miles southeast of downtown Nevada City. The two contiguous parcels are 306 acres. Parcel 1 is 152 acres and parcel 2 is 154 acres. Little difference in the acreage there because in parcel 1 we have 3 county roads that bisect the parcel, so that acreage is taken out. The general land use, general plan land use map that you see before you is not identified for any change in this application, and it is today and will remain rural 10 for parcel 1 and rural 30 for parcel 2. And in parcel 1, I want to identify again that there are 5 APNs. So if it's a little confusing that there were 6 APNs identified in the application, parcel 1 is one parcel, but it is identified with 5 APNs, and that is 38, 330, 01, 02, 03, 04, and 87. And then parcel 2 is just one APN, and that's 38, 330, 86. This map reflects on the top the existing and on the bottom the proposed. And again, parcel 1, the proposal is to go from TPZ 40 to residential Ag 10. And parcel 2, the rezone from TPZ 40 to general Ag 30. Proposed zoning is consistent with land use. So we just went over that the land use for parcel 1 is rural 10, and the land use for parcel 2 is rural 30. Okay, not to confuse things, but hopefully a little clarity in terms of density and making our, that we're consistent with the general plan. So if we first look at the existing condition for the general plan land use for parcel 1, again, we're at rural 10, which at 152 acres would allow 15 residential units. Parcel 2, the land use is rural 30, with 154 acres, the density would allow 5 residential units. And then if we go over to zoning, both of the parcels are TPZ 40, allowing on parcel 1, 3 residential units, and on parcel 2, 3 residential units based on density. Proposed, our general plan land use doesn't change, zoning does. As the proposed is residential ag 10. 10 goes into 152 15 times. We have a density of 15. And on parcel 2, ag 30 would provide a density of 5 residential units for a total of 20 under zoning, 20 under the general plan land use. One thing I do want to note there on the bottom, without the rezone, TPZ 40, you divide 40 into the 306 acres and you would get 7, and that has to do with rounding. We round down when we look at the zoning up top. So if they didn't go through this, they could have a density of 7 between the two parcels. We did receive a one response during the initial study circulation, and that was from our Ag Commissioner, Chris Nijs. And his comment, or actually he brought to our attention that a mistake was made, that in the notice of availability and intent, the RA was used instead of general ag for the 30. Also in the location map that was attached to the initial study, parcel 2 was identified as being rezoned to RA 30 instead of ag 30. And was passed out to you a memo as well as Chris's letter, and he had highlighted where he found the mistakes, and we corrected those mistakes. The rest of the initial study, as well as the staff report, reflected the correct zoning, general ag 30. The environmental review for this process included the preparation and circulation of an initial study, neg deck. Circulation was from April 13th to May 2nd, 2018, 20 days. The initial study and the neg deck found that there were no impacts to environmental resources. As I stated, we received one letter, and based on that letter, we added an additional finding to for the CEQA approval, and that is pursuant to 15073.5 of the CEQA guidelines, recirculation of the project-specific initial study negative declaration is not required as a result of the new information added to correct a mistake regarding the proposed zoning on 38-330-86 in the notice of availability, notice of intent to adopt the negative declaration, and figure 1, location and vicinity map of the initial study neg deck dated April 13th, 2018. Finally, the recommendations. Staff recommends that the Board of Supervisors, recommends the Planning Commission recommend to the Board of Supervisors to adopt the project-specific negative declaration pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, making findings A through C.
For clarifications, as A through D as reflected in staff's memo dated today.
Thank you. And 2, recommend that the Board of Supervisors approve the proposed rezone from TPZ 40 to RA 10, which includes APNs 38, 330, 01, 02, 03, 04, and 87, and TPC 40 to General Ag 30, including APN 38, 330, 86, to initiate the 10-year process to roll out of TPZ and making findings A through C. And I can entertain any of your questions. Also, if there are questions I can't answer, the owner and representative for this project are present.
Okay, thank you, Colleen. Are there any questions from commissioners?
Yes. What's the difference between Ag 30 and RA 30, residential Ag 30?
Mr. Aguilar, or Commissioner Aguilar, Mr. Chair James, the county doesn't have an RA 30 zone. And so the intent here is to match the existing zoning in the area, which is RA 10 for the top portion of the parcel 1, and then match the general ag zoning for the southern parcel, which is Ag 30.
Okay. Other questions?
I have a question. So it's in your opinion that the general plan supports this type of conversion?
Yes.
I have a quick question. And you may have mentioned this in your presentation, but as the rollout ends, is there any action needed at the end of the rollout? In other words, does the rezone and all of that take effect automatically, or is there another action needed at the end of that 10-year period?
The rezone takes effect automatically, and that's why it's important that, in fact, we've worked with our legal counsel in the ordinance to make it very clear that in our zoning maps, that 10-year, hence the date of the approval, that ordinance goes away and it automatically becomes the
So
zone.
no other hearings or actions are necessary then? Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions? All right, is the applicant here, and would you like to make a presentation? If you could just come right up here, sign in, please, and give your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Ron Dundas, Dundas Geomatics, 149 Crown Point Court, Grass Valley. Here to represent the Pay Estate on this rezone application. I think there's really not a heck of a lot we need to add to it. Colleen's done an outstanding job. About the only thing that I could really say about this is in perusing some of the history about this and the public information. Colleen provided some of this to us. I think this is the last time that any discussion concerning this property came before the public body was about 1991, about the time the general plan was being rediscussed at that point in time. And at that point in time, and I won't bore you with all of the comments that happened at that time, I think it was SCO, would have been Dale Creighton, that probably would have crafted the language at that time, commented that this particular piece of property in 1991 probably belonged in the TPZ zone at that point in time, and I was even fairly old in 1991. Traveling up in that area, the area was still pretty rural. There was roads through there. Most of them were dirt roads. There was gravel roads. There was lots developed in the area, but not a lot of houses or anything like that. Well, in the intervening 25, 27 years, progress has basically moved out that far. We now have really one of the nicest pieces of roadway in the county traversing through the middle of this. We have all the infrastructure in place. There's domestic water soon to be put in place from the NID. So at some point or another, I think we've decided that the maintaining this particular 320 acres in a timberland setting in the middle of what has now become more of a developed area really isn't the best thing for it. It probably needs to move forward. And this basically is the contractual way out of those prior tax saving commitments. This allows the applicant and his family to move forward, and 10 years from now, something would change. And that's probably about all I can add. Anybody questions?
Yeah, what's the logic for RA 10 and 30?
Just compliant with the existing general plan. There's no real reason to go tilt at that windmill, try to change it.
Is that what the general plan says for that area? Does it
Yes.
say RA 5? No. Okay, thank you.
We wish it did.
Well, there's RA 5 around it. that's what
Around
I'm
it, yeah,
asking.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question for the firefighter.
Okay. Laura has a question of the fire folks.
I wanted their opinion on this proposal.
How you doing?
Matt Furtado, Fire Protection Planner and Deputy Fire Marshal. Commissioner Duncan, which specifically kind of an opinion would you prefer or asking of?
Adding more residential development in this area. Do you see
We don't
that?
have an opinion on whether you should, as long as when
No,
the
I mean,
time-
based on what's on the ground out there, and do you see this as a problem?
What's on the ground right there is no different than what was on the ground right here. So as long as they are complicit with all the laws of the Public Resources Code in the county at the time of any future development, then there shouldn't be an issue.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. All right, I'll open the public hearing then and see if there's anyone here in the audience that wishes to speak relative to this particular application. If you would sit right here and give your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon. My name's George Olive. I live at 15356 Banner Lava Cap Road. My property is contiguous to the Pay property and near the lots being considered for rezoning. I had a couple questions. One is, 10 years from now, can the owners of the property come back and ask for further subdivision? Can they move down from the 10s and 30s to 3s and 5s? I was interested listening to the adjectives used to describe the nice new road that cuts through the middle of things up there that appeared here 10 years ago, and some other adjectives. I don't necessarily agree with them. We were very quiet up there. This area, as you may know, is at the very end of Banner Lava Cap Road, up on a shoulder of the mountain. And this property is on the downside of the mountain into Greenhorn Creek. And it's pretty rural up there. It's been very quiet. So the new roads, while there's less dust, we don't necessarily consider that progress. See what I mean? Anyways, I am curious as to whether the subdivision can go further. I'm also, in a second question, and this may be completely out of the box, I wonder if the redesignation of these parcels gets involved at all in any of the cannabis plans for the future of the county. That is to say, whether it makes these parcels legal possible grow sites. We would, of course, have concerns about that, although it may end up that that's a perfectly legal possibility. But we are curious about that. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Staff, do you have the answers to those?
Sure. We're gonna tag team. So on the first question about being able to come back 10 years from now and go to RA5 or something, we can always entertain an application, but it would not be consistent with the general plan underlying land use. And so that is a much higher hurdle to amend the general plan to be able to get it to smaller lot sizes.
They can make an application, but they got an extensive process to go through.
Correct.
Correct. And I'd also reiterate that should they subdivide at the proposed density that would be allowed, that it would also require discretionary action, and depending on the number of lots would either require approval from the planning commission or the county zoning administrator. So there'll be a public process for that as well. Related to cannabis, the county is in the process of developing an ordinance. I have reviewed parts of that ordinance. The ordinance would allow likely some type of cannabis growing in the AG zone. My understanding at this point in time that the RA zone is not an allowed area for cannabis activities. But again, that's still being vetted and will be played out through the next year or so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, thank you. So, anyone else?
I have a question since we're on that topic of lot splitting. What about density averaging? Does that allow for, the clustering of the development with?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Aguilar, our code encourages and requires a clustered option be provided with maps within the rural general plan designation. That could be either smaller lots and leaving open space. Another way of doing that is to provide building envelopes that prohibit other areas of the lots to be developed in. So those are two requirements. It is required that a clustering option is submitted in the rural zone, though.
But without a general plan change?
Correct. The part of staff support of this amendment is the fact that the proposed zoning is consistent with the underlying general plan, which anticipated the number of dwelling units that would be built on these parcels as a part of the general plan process and approval.
Right. So to answer, further, did you get that, what I'm saying? Okay, all right.
Okay, if you'd give your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Erin Brutlog, and I live at 15379 Banner Lava Cap Road. So my husband and I just bought this parcel 6 months ago, and so we're adjacent to the border of parcel 1 and 2 that are being discussed. And on a personal note, we bought it really excited being next to the timber zoning because of less residential congestion and density. But my question is that area around Red Dog and Banner Lava Cap, I've seen the sign there about the shaded fuel break that's there, and I've actually been out of the country for 4 months and was just came back last week, was about to actually check into what that project was and how I assumed it was beneficial since it's being advertised to the neighborhood as a fuel break, but if it is changed into a residential zoning, does the fuel break go away? Was that a benefit to our community, and is that something that it should be considered in terms of losing that?
Staff?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, staff isn't purview to that project. I don't know if the gentleman in the uniforms over there might have any idea about that project, but my assumption is, regardless of what the zoning is on this parcel, that would be an important part of managing fuels in this area.
Absolutely, Commission. The driver for the fuel breaks is certainly for the protection of life, property, and environment, infrastructure, and the cost that we're trying to protect is all associated and tied into that. That fuel break, I don't know if it's more of a demonstration of fuel break in that particular area. There is a historic fuel break up on Banner Mountain in that neighborhood, and we are actively and always trying to increase our fuel breaks throughout the county, and especially establishing the previously and prior existing fuel breaks to even when there was any population issues.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to address us on this particular issue? If not, I'll close the public hearing. Any other questions from the commission?
We'll have a comment. Yeah, I like the idea of the 10-year rollout. And just because of like what the young lady said, so neighbors, they can plan ahead. Now, that doesn't mean in 10 years, boom, there's this development. Not at all. We know how development is in Nevada County, and it's really slow. And even after it does get developed, that doesn't mean that it's still developed. Split. Take a look down at Lake Wildwood across from the North Gate. That never did happen. But anyway, it gives the neighbors some planning time, So I think it's a good idea as far as the 10-year rollout goes.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. I make a motion to recommend to the Board of Supervisors adopt the project specific negative declaration EIS 17-0030 pertinent to the California Environmental Quality Act, making findings A through C.
A through D as reflected in staff's memo as a result of the amendments to the initial study. Correct.
Yeah, okay. That was in the memo, yes.
Correct.
Yes, A through D.
I'll second.
Commissioner Jensen.
Yes.
Commissioner Aguilar.
Yes.
Commissioner Duncan. Chair James.
Yes. Okay.
Also, I make a motion to recommend the approval to the Nevada County Board of Supervisors for the proposed rezone RZN 17-0002 from TPZ-40 to residential agricultural RA-10 for APN numbers 38330-01, 02, 03, 04, and 87, 152 acres. And TPZ-40 to General Agricultural AG-30 for APN 38-330-86, 154 acres, to initiate the 10-year process to roll out of TPZ making findings A through C.
Second.
Commissioner Jensen.
Yes.
Commissioner Aguilar.
Yes.
Commissioner Duncan.
Yes.
Chair James.
Yes. 3-0.
There's no appeal period as a result of a recommendation.
There's no
of the board.
appeal on this.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right. The next item is public hearing. Application for a conditional use permit, UP 16-007, to allow the Tree Man Woodyard to continue to operate at the current location, which is on Hidden Valley Road off of Auburn Road, about 2 miles south of Grass Valley. And I need to indicate here that Tim the Tree Man has done work on my property over the years, probably averaging every other year for about $1,200 a year of tree work in the back. And I just want to let the audience and the commission know that that in no way would affect my consideration of this particular application or how I may vote. So with that, staff.
Thank you, Chair James. Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Janine Martin, Associate Planner. I'm happy to come before you today to present the Tim the Tree Man application for your review and consideration. The project is a use permit to allow the Tim the Tree Man Woodyard to be located at the 11758 Hidden Valley Road location. The property is located approximately 2 miles south of the city of Grass Valley city limits off of Auburn Road on Hidden Valley Road. The property is outlined in red on the screen before you. It's a 9-acre parcel nestled in between 2 small neighborhoods, each with parcels as small as 0.63 acres in size. The property has a general plan designation of estate and a zoning designation of residential agricultural. As you can see on the screen, most of the surrounding properties share the zoning designation. However, there is publicly zoned property, open space property, and interim development reserve property, all located nearby. Previous owners used this property as a place to keep their horses. When the current owners purchased the property in 2013, they began cleaning up the property, removing a lot of the features that were associated with the past use. Lean-tos, sheds, corrals, cross fencing were all in various states of disrepair and were removed from the property, and the property owners began using the site for their Tim the Tree Man Woodyard. In 2016, the county received a complaint from a neighbor that there was a commercial business being operated on the property without the benefit of a permit. Our code compliance department looked into this, and this was indeed the case, and a code compliance case was opened on the property pending submittal of a use permit. The owners began working with county planning staff on what that project entailed and gathered their materials and submitted the application in August of 2013. We've been working with them since then to get the project to you for hearing and consideration today, so we're really happy to be here. The use permit would allow the wood yard at the Hidden Valley Road location. The operation includes employee parking and equipment parking. You can see from the aerial, some of the equipment is parked by the existing barn. It includes wood storage on the property site, and the project also includes occasional wood processing on site. The company has 2 chip trucks, a bucket truck, a 4-wheel drive support vehicle, 2 chippers, 2 dump trailers, and a Kubota tractor. When they're not in use on a job site, these are all parked at the wood yard. The typical makeup of the Tim the Tree Man business includes the owners and 6 employees. Employees and an owner arrive on site at or around 7 in the morning, leaving their personal vehicles on site and taking work vehicles to jobs all around the county, including Chair James's house. Some days workers return to the site during the day with a load of wood if that job was large enough to generate more than one load. Most days they return to the site in the afternoon with the wood generated at the various job sites during the day, unload the wood, and leave for home in their personal vehicles, usually well before 5. On-site wood storage includes slash, wood chips, softwood, and hardwood. Occasionally, there's wood processing of the slash and the softwood so that the mass of these is reduced to improve efficiency for removing it from the site to an approved recycling facility. Currently, the wood yard utilizes many parts of the property, with vehicle parking and equipment parking near the barn, and wood materials stored pretty much throughout the rest of the property, except for the wooded area in the eastern arm of the property. However, this use permit approval would consolidate all the use areas so that they would be adjacent to the existing barn, shown here in red. Parking for both employee vehicles and work equipment would remain in the gravel area shown here in the blue dot pattern. The existing porta potty would remain at the northeast corner of the barn, and the existing shipping container would remain at the north side of the gravel area. The biggest change on site is that the wood would no longer be stored throughout the property. Instead, a new 3-sided enclosure here would be constructed approximately 150 feet by 90 feet. It would be a 6-foot tall redwood fence. This enclosure would house all of the wood stored on site. Large shrubs would be planted along a portion of the easterly line, and the driveway would be slightly widened so that it would be 2 9-foot lanes with 1-foot shoulders each side to better provide ingress and egress 2 ways into and out of the property.
I got a question. Can we go back to that? Okay. So where you have the hedge at the top of the hedge, the northern parcel.
Sure.
Is there another road for that one? How do they get to that parcel?
This one here?
No, down the little one, right there.
Oh, this one. Grand Oaks Place extends further than this.
Then it's shown.
This map shows.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. The subject property is relatively flat and open, while the easterly arm of the property that we'll talk about has quite dense vegetation. Only scattered oaks and pines exist along most of the property boundaries. And because the interior of the property is mostly annual grasslands, views into the site, including this one from Curtis Lane and this from Curtis Lane, as well as views from the backyards of properties on Grand Oaks Place looking into the property, are relatively open and unobscured. Consolidating the use areas with the wood storage located in a new fenced enclosure and the addition of new screening shrubs planted on the easterly boundary will screen these areas as is required by the Land Use and Development Code. Here's the new enclosure area and the new shrub planting. The Nevada County Land Use and Development Code establishes daytime noise standards, limiting daytime noise standards from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., which are the woodyard operates within these daytime hours. A noise study was prepared for the project, which found that morning activities associated with employees arriving on site, idling work vehicles, and leaving the site all fall within these allowable daytime standards. The study noted that these noises generated in the morning would also fall within the nighttime noise standards in the rare event that employees arrived before 7, which would be in the nighttime noises. Additionally, the study noted that afternoon noises associated with end-of-day activities at the site fall within the allowable noise standards. However, the noise study did not address potential noise associated with occasional wood processing at the site. Therefore, while these activities are not a daily occurrence, staff recommended the inclusion of a condition of approval that would note that even this occasional wood processing is required to fall within the daytime noise standards. The woodyard operation is not anticipated to result in negative impacts to air quality. However, a woodyard can be a dusty operation. Conditions of approval are proposed to prevent nuisance dust for the neighborhood. Water would have to be applied if needed during daily unloading of materials. Materials to be masticated or for the occasional wood processing would need to be free of dirt. During the wood processing, water application as needed to ensure it's not generating nuisance dust, and suspending operation of mastication or wood processing if winds are gusting or forecasted to gust above 20 miles per hour. Landmark oak groves, landmark oaks, and a seasonal drainage all exist on the 9-acre woodyard property. The landmark oak grove and a seasonal drainage are both located in the easterly arm of the property here. And you can see on the topo layer the drainage there. This section of the property was cross-fenced. You can almost see the line of the vegetation, how it stops. This is the one area of cross-fencing from previous owners that wasn't removed, and that area has remained left alone. It's not part of the project area. Consolidated use areas would be over 200 feet away from these protected resources, and no conditions requiring specific protections are proposed due to the distance of the use area from these features. It just didn't warrant special precautions for these. However, due to the location of a landmark oak and relative proximity to the driveway, which will require widening, a condition of approval is proposed to ensure that driveway widening does not result in unintended negative impacts to that tree. We did receive a neighborhood concern. On Monday, staff spoke with a neighbor, Ms. Pat Nelson, who I believe is here today, regarding fire fuels that exist within that eastern arm of the property. Ms. Nelson followed up with a letter that was provided to you in my staff memo today. Another neighbor, Betty Chikarat, asked that her name be added to Ms. Nelson's letter. She agreed. Ms. Nelson's letter cites several sections of our land use code. Our land use code requires projects located on properties within the state responsibility area known as the SRA, which this project is within, to be reviewed by the appropriate fire agency. for compliance with all the Nevada County fire safety requirements, and further that projects be conditioned to ensure continued maintenance of properties in conformance with these standards. Ms. Nelson and Ms. Chikarat have asked that 2 conditions of approval be added to require defensible space within this easterly arm of the property, specifically in light of the McCourtney fire last summer. The review of the project was in compliance with these requirements and included discussions between county staff, Nevada County Consolidated Fire District Terry McMahon, who's here today, and the Nevada County Office of the State Fire Marshal, Matt Furtado, who's also here today. Project details, including the proposed uses, the use areas, and the land itself, were reviewed and discussed, resulting in the project-specific condition of approval proposed under the Nevada County Consolidated Fire District heading. After reviewing Ms. Nelson's letter and discussing the issue with her, staff had further discussions with McMahon and Furtado regarding this. Both stated that, of course, additional defensible space fuel reduction is always desirable. While that's the case, the requirement is specifically tied to the use area. And because the Tim the Tree Man Woodyard area is located within the grassland over 200 feet away from this portion of the property, annual mowing of the property by June 15th, with regular mowing throughout the fire season, is still determined to be the appropriate condition of approval for this particular project. With no proximity to the easterly arm of the property, there's no clear connection to require defensible space within the easterly arm of the property as a condition of this project. However, it should be noted that this discussion prompted staff to discuss the topic with the owners, and they're very willing to provide fuel reduction in this area. That's what they're good at. The project was reviewed for potential environmental impacts through a project-specific initial study and mitigated negative declaration. The mitigated negative declaration was circulated for the required 20-day period. It has been determined that with the implementation of the project-specific conditions of approval and mitigation measures, that all potential project-related impacts would be mitigated to a less than significant level. The project has been found to be consistent with both the general plan designation and the zoning designation, which allows a woodyard through approval of a use permit. Therefore, staff recommends that the Commission adopt mitigated negative declaration for the project, making findings A through C, and that further you approve the use permit, making findings A through L. Thank you.
Thanks,
Commissioners, just to clarify the record, the application was submitted in 2016. Planner Martin referenced 2013.
Okay. All right. Are there any questions from the commissioners? Bob?
In the staff report, it says it said that there was no on-site pickup by individuals. Did I read that correctly?
I'm not sure what page you're referring to, but I don't believe you did. Wood chips are available for the public at no charge. Public can come and pick that up.
Thank you. And the wood processing, is that going to include a lot of chainsaw work?
I can let
I can hold that one for the...
Sure. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just a comment / kind of question, but I'm surprised environmental health didn't require a bathroom on site.
I talked to them about that, and they did not. They felt that it was adequate. There is a maintenance contract that was provided, so it's maintained on a weekly basis, both emptied if necessary and cleaned by a local company.
Okay, and building is okay with that?
Yes.
I mean, that's just really surprising with handicap standards and all that stuff. It's kind of shocking, actually. Is there water on site?
NID provides water to the site,
Okay,
yes.
all right. Okay, yeah.
Okay, and nothing further from the commission? When the applicant is here, you can come up to the sign in, give your name and address, please.
Good afternoon, I'm Tim Murphy, this is my wife Karen. We live at 20008 New Rome Road, Nevada City.
Okay. Would you like to make a presentation, or?
No, I think staff did an excellent job making a presentation. So one question by one of your members of the board or commission, about chainsaw activity. We don't process firewood ourselves. We store the wood there. I sell it in bulk. So once a year or even twice a year, somebody will come in and they'll use tractors and they'll load it up and they'll haul it all away. And currently we're not hauling softwood to our yard because New Leaf is open again, so we take the stuff there. Occasionally we'll get a couple pieces of softwood during the day and it doesn't justify a trip to New Leaf, so we'll bring it, dump it off. Then on a weekend, some weekends I'll load it up with my tractor and haul it away. But the only wood that's processed there, I mean the slash is processed, the things we rake up that we don't put through the chipper, that we bring a masticator in and turn it into to wood chips. And that's twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall. And it'll probably be, now that the area is more limited to where I can put the slash, that's going to be done a little more often. And those new masticators are pretty quiet as far as the noise. So back to the processing of the wood. The only wood that's actually cut or split into firewood is for my personal use at my home. I don't sell firewood, processed firewood.
The softwood and stuff that accumulates on site during the summer that you say you process twice a year, how big a pile does that get to be?
Well, when New Leaf was closed, it got to be a pretty big pile, but now I keep on top of it. There's probably 10 yards scattered around. Yep.
Thank you.
So you're saying that you're going to do more mastication in the future, and how much time does that, and here's the concern, 7 hours, it's 12 hours, 7 to 7, would be a heck of a long time to be in the neighborhood. So, and then the other problem would be, at 7 o'clock is kind of tough too in the neighborhood, because people are having barbecues during the summer and the spring, and that kind of noise would be objectionable in the neighborhood. And so the question is since this is a conditional use permit, how many hours a day would you need for mastication?
It's not quite that as bad as it sounds. Even when I only do it twice a year, he's only there for 2 hours. So if I'm doing it more often, if I do it 3 times a year, he's going to be there less than 2 hours.
Okay, so if we put a condition on here saying that, mastication, no more than 2 hours a day, done not before 8 o'clock in the morning, between the hours of 8 and 5, and 2 hours maximum, you'd be okay with that?
I also forgot to mention that I don't let anybody come in there and pick up wood chips before 8 o'clock in the morning, and the same with the mastication, not before 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. All righty.
And yes, I'd be okay with that.
Okay, all right.
Are there any other questions of the applicant? If not, okay. And I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to speak? Come right up here if you would, and sign in and give your name and address.
Good afternoon, commissioners and staff. Thank you, Janine, for a wonderful report. I live at the northeast parcel at the end, at the northern end of Grand Oaks Place. If you can show that, I'd appreciate it, Janine.
Right here.
I think there's a parcel.
And if you would give your name as well.
Oh, sure. Pat Nelson. I'm at 13449 Grand Oaks Place.
Thank you.
That's this one here.
That's correct. There was, maybe I can pull it out of the ISMND, the figure number. I guess it's figure 3 of the site plan.
I don't have that on this computer. That one would probably do it, huh?
At any rate, there is this eastern arm of the Tim the Tree Man property, and it is noted on figure 3 as having softwood, no commercial value, and it's a real densely wooded and, for the most part, a fire hazard, which prompted me to write my memo for your consideration. Because Tim the Tree Man is concentrating the work or the project on the western boundary of the property, this is really my opportunity and my neighbor's opportunity to make the point before the commission that this would be the time to condition the permit to address the fuel buildup in that eastern arm of the property. My residents and my neighbor's residents, probably between 50 and 100 feet of that fence line. There's a lot of dead wood. We know that there is wildlife that resides within it, and we know we need to be careful about that. But the fire hazard, when we were evacuated last October, really made a point to us in the neighborhood to try to address not only this section of the Murphy property, but also the BLM, adjacent BLM land. So I would appreciate your consideration of creating the conditions to this permit, because there may not be another opportunity for it to be considered in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on the project? Yes, ma'am. Right up here, and name and address.
My name is Barbara Whedon, and I live at 13382 Curtis Lane, right across from Tim the Tree Man. And my house is exactly right there. And all I can tell you is that they are very professional. They are quiet. I never hear anyone come in or out. I don't hear any major noises. Yeah, once in a while I'll hear a chainsaw, but nothing more than you might not hear in your own neighborhood when you're doing something in your own yard. They're very professional. They do everything that they can to accommodate the neighborhood. So I just wanted to let you know that they are, not only is there a business running there, but they are good neighbors, and they do care about the whole neighborhood.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission.
Well, I was out there today, and it was nice and neat and quiet. I don't think anybody was there, but yeah, it was. It seemed, like it was more of kind of a storage area. So I mean, it actually, I thought when I said, "Gee, the bathroom," it's shocking that they didn't require it. When I was reading the report, I kept waiting for that to happen, and I'm kind of glad that because it made sense to me that it was just kind kind of more of a storage facility, really. And I'll be happy, you know, as Mr. Murphy is willing to accept a 2-hour window for the mastication between 8 and 5, then I'd be happy with it.
Bob?
On that note, I would not like to restrict him to 2 hours a day, as long as he's below the noise level at the property lines. He should be able to do whatever he wants to do from 8 to 5 on the property. I understand we don't want it done all day long, every day, but if he has a specific need for something to be done on a day, to limit him to 2 hours seems unreasonable to me.
Well,
limiting to 4 hours, but
yeah, I don't agree with that, Bob, and I'll tell you why. Because, I'm sure you were out there too. That there's neighbors that surround the whole area, and he's a fishbowl in that neighborhood. Yeah, so most people are pretty sensitive to that noise. So I mean, I think the 2 hours. At first, I had an hour and a half. I thought that would be reasonable from reading the report, but then he said a couple hours. So.
Is there a comment from the applicant?
Yes, please. I currently have a big row of stash on the most northern end of the property, and I've called the guy who does my masticating, and we're going to look at, of course, I show him what I need done, but we're going to look at that section that the Nelsons are concerned about and see if I could just hand clear that with my crew, in which case, of course, if we do it with the masticator would be running longer to clear that one section. But I might just do it with my crew and hand clear it. So I just want to say that. And 2 hours is plenty. On a other than clearing that 1 acre of land that's heavily wooded, 2 hours is plenty.
Okay. Applicant seems to be agreeable to those issues.
yeah, I just don't like to set the precedent of requiring something to that small of a time limit. There's all kinds of things going on in the county that could be used on the same, you look at the same way, but to set a precedent to 2 hours is, I'm not in favor.
Yeah. However, if he sells the business, right, so the use permit goes with the property.
With the land, correct.
Yeah. So then somebody else can go in there and say, hey, this is great. I can masticate 8 hours, I mean, so that's my logic, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to stick with that, especially since the applicant's okay with it.
Tyler?
I just want to first address the eastern arm briefly. That is a biologically sensitive area, and staff doesn't see a nexus in terms of requiring a condition that they clear that. Again, they're willing to work with the neighbors and do hand clearing. That's completely between those two neighbors and acceptable to staff. Regarding the time limit, I'd like to read a potential condition into the record and let the commission decide on that. Again, it's not my opinion, but I feel 2 hours may be a little short to get the thing off the truck, get it running, have it warm up, do the work. I would suggest maybe 3 or 4 hours, but again, that's up to your decision. But for the record, I'd like to read a potential condition. It would be condition A11 under the planning department. It would be mastication activities shall be limited between the hours of 8 and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and shall not exceed a duration of 2 hours per Commissioner Aguilar's comment during any given day. And that could be changed to 4 hours, 3 hours, whatever the commission feels is appropriate. There isn't a code standard that restricts them to that timeline.
Well, my idea of the mastication is actually the machine running, not the setup, not the breakdown. So, yeah.
Okay. Are there any other more discussion? Bob?
Yeah, I would agree if we could come up with a reason that we're putting it on this particular piece of property so that it doesn't look like we're setting a precedent to do it in the county. If it's because the neighbors are on all four sides, or if it's because the land is open and there's no sound barriers or buffers or something like that, so that it doesn't go countywide.
Commissioner Jensen, condition would be specific to this particular project based on the circumstances that are out there in the field today. So it's the purview of the commission to add such a condition, and it's up to you to decide what that is appropriate for this project.
Okay. Anything else, any other questions, or?
I'd be inclined to extend that 2 hour. The 2 hour window seems a bit restrictive. You get a crew there to get ready to do the work, and 2 hours goes by pretty quickly. I could see a longer period of time, and it is specific to this parcel, this
Right.
use of it. And it's in light of the fact that there are close by neighbors, and as Paul said, it's a sample. Doesn't sound like the business is going to be doing this every day, though. So maybe we could. I would be inclined to give them a wider, more hours than 2.
How about splitting it here, and I just put a suggestion, and we go with a 3 hour limit? That seems acceptable.
Yeah, okay. If that's 3 hours, David, we got 3 hours.
Barely get warmed up.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm coming off of, well, it doesn't matter. It's just that I've heard complaints from neighbors, and not about these people, but
Noise?
yeah, just noise. It's barbecue time. It's and granted, it's not on the weekend, but as the weather gets nice, there was 2 people outside today. And they were in their backyard. And I was just thinking, wow, that would really annoy me if I'm working out and doing gardening, and then I'm listening to this mastication. And that was on the eastern side. So that's where I'm coming from. So, yeah.
Where are you going with this, Bob?
I understand, since there's neighbors all the way around, that we don't want to be doing it 8 hours a day.
Commissioner Jensen, will you use your mic?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
And you can use it for more than 2 hours a day, too.
Yes. I understand the applicant says he can do it in 2 hours a day. I just don't want it to leave this project. There's so many different occupations going on in Nevada County that to restrict them, it's restrictive, and I don't like it. I will vote for 3 hours a day, though.
Well, yeah, but I mean, this is residential agriculture. I mean, this is not M1. So that's.
You know what they do on ag land? I mean, there's a lot of noise generated.
They do. Right. So anyway, that's why I said I'd compromise with 3, and it sounds like Bob
3?
would too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good.
All right.
3 hours and not a minute more.
I just wanted to assure Commissioner Aguilar that we're not masticating stands of manzanita. It doesn't sound the same. What we're masticating is the stuff we rake up. It's twigs, there might be an occasional limit, but the masticator going back, it's no louder than somebody's lawnmower at a distance. It really isn't. And it's going to be inside a fenced enclosure. That's where we're going to be doing the masticating in the future.
Okay.
Thank you,
I think
Mr.
we got
Murphy.
it. All right. Well, I think we beat that one to death. I think it's time for somebody to make a motion, please.
Whose area is this?
It's my area, but usually the chair is not supposed to make the motion.
All right. I'll make a motion since Bob did it last time. How's that?
Is there a second to the motion?
Oh, I haven't
Sorry.
made it yet. Sorry. I was,
Okay, flipping through.
I'd like to make a motion that after reviewing and considering the proposed mitigated negative deck, adopt the proposed mitigated negative deck EIS 18-0014 Attachment 2 and Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Program Attachment 1 pursuant to Section 15074 and 15097 of the California CEQA, making findings A through C.
I'll second that.
Okay,
Commissioner Aguilar.
Um,
and that's with the new condition, I think.
I think the new condition goes into this second part. Yeah. Yes.
Commissioner Jensen.
Yes.
Commissioner Duncan. Chair James.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve proposed use permit U16-007, subject to the attached conditions of approval shown in attachment 1, as modified at the public hearing, as read by Tyler for the 3-hour mastication limit between 8 and 5, making findings A through L. M. A through M.
L.
L.
Oh, that's not its own requirement.
No. Pursuant to sections L Roman numeral 2, 5.6G and L Roman numeral 2, 5.5.2.C of the California Land Use and Development Code.
That's Nevada County land use.
Nevada County, what did I say? Nevada County land use.
You're thinking way ahead.
I am.
I second that.
Commissioner Aguilar.
Yes.
Commissioner Jensen.
Yes.
Commissioner Duncan.
Yes.
Chair James.
Yes. Okay, and is there an appeal period
There
on
is.
this?
There's a 10-day appeal
There is
period
a
on that.
10-day
action.
appeal period on this item. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Upcoming meetings. I understand we have our second meeting in May. We'll be going forward then, okay?
The item before the Planning Commission on the 24th will be the Western Gateway Park amendment to their comprehensive master plan to add a bike park feature to the western side of the park.
Okay. What's the next month look like?
No hearings scheduled as of yet.
Yet, okay. All right. Any announcements from the commission or staff?
Staff does have an announcement. Staff would like to announce that the board chambers will not be available between July 18th and August 24th. They are working on upgrading the digital system here. We are anticipating potentially looking at maybe having a truckee meeting during that time frame to either look at a scoping session for the Boca Quarry EIR, which your Planning Commission has seen before, and potentially a scoping session for the Lake Van Norden project, which is going on up there. If other items are scheduled before the commission, we might be looking for an alternative location, such as either the Empire Room or maybe somewhere in Nevada City. But that's to be determined at this time, because we don't have any items scheduled.
Okay. All right.
We'd also like to introduce the new planner, Alexi. First you leave.
Thanks. Commission, I'd also like to introduce, we have a new assistant planner with the county planning department.
She's trying to leave.
She's trying to leave. Her name is Lexi Wardell. She's coming from the city of Mountain View, and she's a graduate from Nevada Union, so she's coming back to the area, and she went to University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill.
What's her first name again?
Alexi.
Alexi. Did the staff tell you that you're supposed to come up here now and do a 10-minute presentation on your background and your interest? They didn't tell you that, huh? Okay. Is there a motion for an adjournment then? Okay.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Thank you all.
Well, welcome.